What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast today on Wednesday, November 3rd. I hope you all are having a phenomenal day so far, as am I. It is Wednesday, November 3rd. Everybody is having a phenomenal time, especially down here in Atlanta. Sorry, I just had to change my camera real quick. Again, I hope you all are having a phenomenal Wednesday. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan right there. You can follow this podcast at Locked On Pirates on Twitter as well. You can also follow it on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube as well, where you could come see my beautiful face every single day, Monday through Friday for the time being. It is officially the off season. What are some of the predictions I have for the Pirates off season? I'm not going to name specific players, but I am going to name specific things that I do expect Ben Cherington and the front office to achieve this year. I'm also going to talk about the Atlanta Braves winning the World Series and what the Pittsburgh Pirates can learn from the Atlanta Braves when they get to a contending spot once again, and where they could be in terms of getting to that point here in the next couple of seasons. But before I get into today's episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Spotify Green Room is the first social audio platform that brings sports fans together. You can download it on any iOS device. You can talk about the World Series and the baseball offseason, football, basketball, hockey, soccer is going on today as well, UFC, any sport that you want to talk about, you can find somewhere on Spotify Green Room to do it. You can also catch one of our Locked On rooms, including mine as well. I'll probably be doing some throughout the off season, so make sure you go check out Spotify Green Room today and follow me at MVP_Ethan on there. You can link your Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff so people can follow the work that you guys also do as well. I also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day every single day, Monday through Friday, going all through the year. We're approaching episode 300, so I want you guys to give me some ideas on what we could do for the 300th episode of the Locked On Pirates podcast. But with all of that said today, let's go ahead and get right into it.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as mentioned again, of course, I am your host, Ethan Smith of the Locked On Pirates podcast. You can see right there on the bottom of the screen, you can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. And you also see at the bottom of the screen now the little news tab. We are here in the mid-afternoon on Wednesday, so it's been roughly almost 24 hours since Game 6 of the World Series started. And the Atlanta Braves, as I mentioned on the podcast yesterday, did exactly what they were supposed to do. They got out of the gates very quickly, made things happen, and they just ran away with this game yesterday, beating the Astros in Game 6 in Houston in Minute Maid Park to really solidify and finally win their first World Series since 1995. Of course, one of the cool stories I found the other day was there was a guy who bet the Atlanta Braves to win the World Series when they were 44-44. Of course, there's some notability to that because Hank Aaron, the great Hank Aaron, wore number 44 for the Atlanta Braves. I believe he bet $1,000 and that cashed out at $2.95 million. So you never know when these sports bets are going to really do something for you. They can really do a lot for you in terms of that and just believing in your team. And that's what the Atlanta front office did. Ronald Acuna went down with a torn ACL. They did not have Mike Soroka for most of the year. Marcell Ozuna had some off-field issues that sidelined him for pretty much the entire year as well. You lose Charlie Morton in Game 1. Pretty much everything was stacked against Atlanta here in this series. And realistically, this has to be a huge feat for them just because of the idea that they pulled this out. They beat the Brewers, they beat the Dodgers and the Astros. That's a really tough gauntlet to go through, and they are now the second of three NL East teams to win the World Series in the last couple of years. Of course, the Nationals won it in 2019, defeating the Astros in Minute Maid Park in Game 7 of that series. But nice to see the Braves win. Nice to see him do it, but we're going to go to our Locked On Insiders to see what they had to say about the Atlanta Braves winning their first World Series since 1995.
Welcome into another Locked On MLB Insider Report. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens, joined by our MLB Insider, Gordon Beckham, and we're reacting to the new World Series champions. The Braves have taken home their first championship in quite a while. You kind of called it from the beginning, and this game wasn't overly close by any means, but what did you see from the Braves during this series, and how impressed were you in their efforts?
Yeah, I think that the Braves really just continued doing what they were doing. I mean, they were the hottest team, kind of coming in the playoffs. Their second half was amazing. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but they kind of shocked people with taking the Brewers down in basically 4 games, and then beat the Dodgers, who everybody thought would be in the World Series again. And so you just kind of saw this building, and the first batter of the World Series, it's a home run, and so Soler, it might be the MVP. I haven't seen who ended up winning it, but anyways,
And before we continue, by the way, for context, Soler did end up winning MVP after that moonshot of a home run that he had in Game 6. And, of course, he kicked off the World Series in Game 1 with hitting a home run. And, I mean, that was a weird part of the series. And our pal Sully over at Locked On MLB, Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, said that it was going to be kind of a tough pick on who would win the World Series MVP this year because there really was no definitive guy to win it. Soler definitely deserved it, but there was plenty of amount of guys that deserved it. He could have given it to Max Fried. He had a phenomenal Game 6, but I mean, he also had some kind of lumps in there as well. But shouts out to Jorge Soler for also winning World Series MVP, but we'll bring in Gordon and Kayani back here in a second.
Just that momentum kind of kept going, throughout the playoffs, and you could just tell they were a team of destiny. They were a team that was wanting to win. They were a tight-knit group, and everybody was pulling for each other. You could really see that. And the Houston also was doing the same thing, but the Braves just had something special. I think before the series, I actually said that they're going to win in 6, and it actually came true, which never happens. But it happened here. They just were a team that was, moving in a really good direction against a team like Houston that was playing well, but the Braves they came out and did it. I mean, they lost Morton in the first game, and they didn't blink an eye.
They really were coming into this hot. So were the Astros, though. For them to be able to be so dominant over them in this series, I mean, you've covered this team, the Braves, throughout the year. Can you kind of lay out, this wasn't the team that they were in the midsummer around July. So kind of how did Atlanta become the team that won the World Series?
Right. So I spent some time covering this team. I did some pre and post games for them. I was around their clubhouse and understood kind of how they were ticking. And I was covering the team at the end of July. And people were asking me, what do you think? And I'm like, I just don't think they're a playoff team. Now, this is before they basically made all the trades. I think they had traded for Jock Peterson at that point, but they hadn't made the trade for Soler, Rosario, or Duvall at that point. And so they were not a team. And speaking to Brian Snicker the other day in the NLCS, he just said, listen, we weren't a playoff team. And then all of a sudden we got these other guys into the lineup, and it was just a different team. So the reason that the Braves won the World Series is because of those trades. I mean, there is no doubt about it. Their pitching staff remained basically the same. I mean, they had the same guys that for most of the year in their pitching staff that made it happen. But their outfield changed the game and is the reason they won the World Series, because without these guys, I mean, you just look back at all the things that Rosario did, Peterson did, Duvall had some big games, and then Soler in the World Series. I mean, these guys are the reason they won the World Series. I mean, Freddie Freeman had a great series. He had a great playoffs, but he's not the reason they won the World Series. The reason they won is because of the trades that Alex Anthopoulos made in the end of July to get their team a lineup that could compete. And what happens when you have guys that are veteran players that can go up to bat and really make the opposing pitchers grind, the opposing staff, it just wears them down. If they always have to make good pitches and you have veteran players, then it just makes them be that much more fine for that much, for that longer, I mean, they have to be really good for a long time to beat this team. And this team just came together. I mean, Duvall's never played better than he has in a Braves uniform. He's gone all over. He hasn't had as much success, but every time he's in a Braves uniform, he's just, lights out. So just a lot of guys, a lot of guys contributed, but the reason they won this World Series is because of the outfield. I mean, they lost Acuna earlier in the year, and everybody's like, all right, this just isn't going to be our year. They were up and down. They weren't a playoff team. And then all of a sudden it just flip-flopped and they just went on a roll and didn't ever look back.
Ton of new faces doing work, great front office work to put that roster together to be as successful as they have been. But we did mention Freddie Freeman. There are some faces that have been around for a while. What does this win mean to them and kind of for the future of the organization?
Yeah, Freddie, he's a legend in that organization. He'll probably retire as number one day. I mean, for what he's done. I couldn't help but think that they don't make the World Series and win the World Series this year without players like me that got him all these really good draft picks at the top of the draft. But Freddie Freeman is a great teammate, a great player. I think that he's got the best approach in baseball, and it's not even close. What he does on a day in, day out basis, he's so talented. His swing is so talented. His approach is so talented, and also disciplined, that he just never wavers from that. And I couldn't be happier for a guy that I've played with, but also a guy that really is a great face for baseball. I mean, this guy loves playing. He's really good at it. He's done it for a long time. And I know that he and Brian Snitker are just really, really excited to bring this championship back to Atlanta. And knowing Snit, this is a long time coming because nobody gave him a chance for about 50 years. And he got a chance, and he's just been amazing at the helm of the Braves. A great person, also a great manager. He makes all the right moves. And couldn't be happier for those two that I've actually spent some time with.
I mean, not much more to say. They were just dominant. Right?
They were.
They really were. Obviously, hopefully not the last we see of Freddie Freeman in Atlanta. He's going to be a free agent, so could be, but we're not quite sure yet.
They need to pony up. They need to pony up to keep him there. I can't imagine that they can let him go now.
They've made it difficult. He's going to want that money now for sure. We appreciate all of you guys tuning in for our MLB Locked On Insider Reports throughout the season. Again, congratulations to the Braves on their World Series championship. For our insider, Gordon Beckham, I'm Kainani Stevens. Locked On, your team every day.
And big shouts out to Kainani Stevens and Gordon Beckham for all of the work that they have done as Locked On Insiders here at the Locked On Podcast Network. And before we move into the next segment, I want to let you guys know that today's episode, of course, is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. As mentioned earlier, Spotify Green Room is the first social audio platform that brings sports fans together. You can talk about the World Series and the baseball offseason, football, basketball, hockey, UFC, anything that you can think of. College football just released their first college football playoff rankings, and, they're very interesting. But go Dogs. Check out Dan and Clint over the Locked On Bulldogs podcast, because they're also on Spotify Green Room, where you can find any kinds of sports fans that you want to talk to about almost anything in the sports world. You can go download it on all iOS devices now. That is Spotify Green Room, bringing sports fans together. And now, with Atlanta winning, I pose a question to you, Locked On Pirates Nation. What can the Pirates learn from Atlanta? That's the biggest kind of takeaway that I took from this. And I mean, you've seen Atlanta, they broke the streak of 16 playoff appearances without winning a World Series. That was the longest such streak in all of Major League Baseball. So they finally get over the hump, right? And comparing Pittsburgh and Atlanta directly. So comparing them directly, you can't really do that. There's no way that you can really build a direct comparison between what the Braves are able to do and what the Pirates are able to do. There's just no way that you can really do it. Now, when I say that, there's no ill intent behind it, but the Braves have star power already. Ozzie Albies, Eddie Rosario kind of established himself that way. Freddie Freeman is a former MVP. Ronald Acuna Jr., who is out for most of the year, but he will be back next year. And that's the scary part about this, is he's going to be back next year for the Atlanta Braves. So they will be probably right back in this mold. And the Pirates, for all intents and purposes, heading into 2022, unless they make some crazy moves, are not going to be contending for a World Series next year. Might not be in 2023. 2023 is kind of the benchmark that we've placed on it, but we'll see. But what can you take from what the Braves did this season as a Pittsburgh Pirates fan and say this is what the Pirates can do when they get super competitive in the coming years? Well, for starters, the Braves realistically just put faith in their team. They really did. That front office put a bunch of faith in their team. They said, you know what? The NL East is there for the taking. And realistically, the Brewers ran away with the NL Central this year, but they have some question marks that they have to answer. The Cincinnati Reds, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Chicago Cubs, and the Pirates, they all have questions to answer. There is no unequivocally best team in this division heading into 2022, I don't think. The Brewers didn't win a playoff series. The Reds didn't make the playoffs. The Cubs and the Pirates didn't make the playoffs, and the Cardinals got knocked out in the wild card game. There's no real juggernaut team in this division right now. I mean, the Brewers were, but they don't have the offense to back it up. So what that says to me is the NL Central in a couple of seasons could be a lot like the NL East was this year, where it was just so cutting it and competitive that the Braves really said, okay, we might not have Ronald Acuna right now. We might not have some of our best players like Mike Soroka. We might not have these guys right now. But if we make the right moves at the deadline or make some moves just around in general, you can really still build a contending team. And that's exactly what they did. They brought in Richard Rodriguez, who from the Pirates, for Bryce Wilson. Shouts out to Bryce Wilson, by the way, for getting a World Series ring. I think he should get one considering he was on the team this year. But Richard Rodriguez, I'm sure he helped a little bit. He was not on the World Series roster, but he was still on the team down the stretch of after the trade deadline in the second half of the season, and I'm sure he helped. Jorge Soler, they picked him up from the Kansas City Royals, and he wins World Series MVP. He's a big reason why the Braves win it. Eddie Rosario, another big guy as well. Guillermo Heredia was a starting outfielder for the Pirates last year in 2020, and the Braves bring him in after the fact of him being in Pittsburgh. He's a big part of the outfield after Ronald Acuna gets hurt. And then, I mean, it's really just about building a establishment of, okay, here's our core. If you look at the Braves core, Ronald Acuna, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson, Austin Riley, that pretty much sums it up for you. That's where it's pretty much at is, I mean, you have a strong middle infield, a good catcher, a great first baseman, and a great outfielder. That's what they've had. They've had that for a while now. They just finally got over the hump, ironically, without Acuna. So, I mean, we're not going to say Acuna was the problem because he wasn't. But, I mean, realistically, the Pirates just need to say, let's say 2023 comes around. The NL Central, everybody's kind of bottled up in the division. It's like 4 or 5 games separating each other and stuff like that. The Braves were 44-44. They pale a lot of comparison to what the Nationals did in 2019, where the Nationals were under 500 around the trade deadline time, and it just went on a crazy mad streak and won the World Series. The season is never over in June or July. You have a identity about yourself. You kind of know what team you are by then, but the season by no means is over. So if I'm the Pirates and 2023 comes around and I see what Atlanta did this year, I immediately say this: get aggressive in the trade deadline. Get a little bit aggressive in free agency as well. Bring in pieces that if they don't work out, they don't work out, but you never know what pieces are going to work out. And we saw that from the Pirates this year. Ben Gamble ends up being a great left fielder for the Pirates. Not a great, I mean, great's kind of a strong word, but a very good left fielder and a serviceable left fielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yoshi Tsutsugo comes in, starts hitting the ball like he was in Japan a little bit, not crazy stuff, but he's at least in consideration to be back. He wasn't just a guy that you say, oh, okay, we're just going to keep him for this year and then not bring him back. You know, like there's actual consideration that Yoshi Tsutsugo, who is one of 3 free agents for the Pittsburgh Pirates, could be brought back. The other 2, Shelby Miller and Trevor Cahill, highly doubt that they get brought back, but they did that. And I mean, then you add O'Neal Cruz to the mix, who came up for only a couple of games, but he showed what he can do. Roansy Contreras came up for a game, looked pretty solid as well. You're going to have these guys come up next year too. Say the Pirates, theoretically, I'm not saying they're going to compete for the playoffs next year because they probably won't, but say some of these prospects like a Cruz, a Swaggerty, a Cal Mitchell, a Roansy Contreras, a Miguel Yajure really come up and make a major impact in where they're supposed to. And then the Pirates say, okay, maybe we can make a couple of moves and bring some guys in. And that's what I think they really need to focus on here in the next couple weeks and months. And then when they eventually do contend is don't be afraid to get aggressive. I'm not afraid to say Ben Cherington will get aggressive because I definitely think he will when the time is right. And that's for him to tell you when the time is right. That's not for me to tell you. This offseason, which we'll get into in the next segment, don't be too aggressive, but don't be afraid to bring in maybe a guy that you want to spend a little bit of money on, like a John Gray. That's a very interesting name that a lot of people have been telling me is John Gray. Don't be afraid to bring that kind of guy in. Don't be afraid to spend just a little bit of money because you only have 3 free agents and the rest of the guys are arbitration. The biggest thing the Pirates are going to have to worry about, which we'll talk a little bit about more in the next segment, is who do you put on the 40-man roster? That's going to be their biggest thing. But before I get on too much of a tangent about that, considering that's our last segment, I want to let you guys know that today's episode is, of course, brought to you by the best protein bars on the market. That is Built Bar. Built Bar, of course, has 9 unique flavors ranging from cherry barcia, German chocolate. They sent me these cool blueberry muffin ones that I thought were really good. I was holding it up backwards, but they're very good. I never thought I'd like blueberry muffins with chocolate, but they're very good. And of those 9 flavors, if you want to try all 9 to see which one is your favorite, you can buy a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of the unique 9 flavors. So you get 18 Built Bars in that mixed box. The best part about it too, they're very great tasting, but they're also good for you as well. Each has 3 to 5 grams of net carbs and net sugar, 130 to 130 or 80 calories, and they're all 100% chocolate and no artificial flavors at all. So they're very, very, very good for you. And I couldn't think of any other better protein bars. And if you want to invest in the best protein bars on the market, make sure you hit up BuiltBar.com and use that promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off of your next order, meaning if you are already using Built Bar and have not used this promo code, you can use it on your next order to receive 15% off of the best protein bars on the market. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetOnline.ag. BetOnline.ag is where the game starts. Right now, baseball's done, but now all eyes move to the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and use that promo code LOCKEDON on the bottom of your screen to receive your 50% welcome bonus, meaning if you put in 1 unit, which is $100, they will match it with half a unit of $50 of free money to bet on football, basketball, boxing, and even right to your favorite casino games in Vegas. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for this 2021 season. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. And now, like I was kind of already hinting at in the last segment, Pirates offseason predictions. I've been talking about a lot of the Pirates offseason considering their season has been over for a little bit over a month now, just a little bit over a month. And every team is in the offseason now. The World Series ended yesterday. The last play, the last throw to first base was made. The Atlanta Braves are World Series champions, but now everybody is 0-0. The Pirates are tied for first place in the NL Central. Shouts out to the Pittsburgh Pirates for being tied for first place in the NL Central. What should the Pirates do this offseason? Well, as I already kind of mentioned, the Rule 5 draft and the 40-man roster are going to be their biggest decisions. And that's going to really come down to what guys do you protect on the team? What guys do you bring onto the 40-man? What guys do you let be exposed to the Rule 5 draft? Stuff like that. And some of these guys in lower divisions, like a Nick Gonzalez, a Liover Piguero, a Quinn Priester, a Carmen Majinski, do you protect them and put them on the 40-man roster, or do you expose them to the Rule 5 draft? That's a very big thing that you have to pay attention to because maybe a team takes a flyer on Liover Piguero or Nick Gonzalez. It's highly doubtable just because they haven't been in the minor leagues that long. But do the Pirates want to take the possibility of potentially losing them? That's one of the biggest things, but a lot of those questions are going to have to be made in Double-A. Double-A, like guys like Rodolfo Castro. Rodolfo Castro is a very big one as well. You got to see him play in Pittsburgh. He had his best moments against the New York Mets in 2021, but he was bouncing between Double-A and Major League Baseball. So do you give them a 40-man roster spot with all of these young middle infielders that are going to be garnering for roster spots like a Michael Chavis, a Hoy Park, a O'Neal Cruz, guys like that? O'Neal Cruz is going to be on the 40-man roster. There's no given, or there's nothing wrong there. Kevin Newman will be. I'm sure Hoy Park will be. I'm sure Michael Chavis will be. So there's already a lot of guys. So then you have Cole Tucker. Cole Tucker is another big guy that you have to consider there. And then also around other places too. Do you give Michael Perez arbitration, or do you look to go get a backup catcher, like a better backup catcher, like I said they need to? Jacob Stallings and Brian Reynolds are going to be arbitration eligible as well. I believe Brian Reynolds on Fangraphs is around 4.4 million right now on the arbitration number that has been projected. So you're going to be giving those guys some money too. Anthony Alford is another guy that you have to consider with guys like Travis Swaggerty, Cal Mitchell, Kanan Smith-Njigba, Tucupita Marcano as well, another guy that can bounce around the field, all kind of being ready to go. Yoshi Tsutsugo is a free agent. That's another big question the Pirates are going to have to answer is, do they re-sign Yoshi Tsutsugo not knowing if there's going to be a universal DH? Because then if you re-sign him with Colin Moran still at first, where do you play him? Because Yoshi Tsutsugo virtually, and I think most of us saw this year, is unplayable as a right fielder. He just can't play the position defensively well enough. And there's nothing wrong with that, but when you have a guy that hit 10 home runs with you last year and gives you a good power dynamic in a lineup that had no power dynamic at all, I believe the Pirates were last in all of Major League Baseball in home runs. That's a tough decision to make. It really is. And the Pirates, again, what I've said for weeks now is their emphasis needs to be put on starting pitching, relief pitching, backup catcher, right fielder. You have your third baseman, Ke'Bryan Hayes. The middle infield's going to figure itself out. There's a lot of names there. I'm sure one or two of those guys are going to pan out. Maybe some of them do. Maybe some of them don't. Not all of them are going to pan out. They're prospects. You're going to see some of these guys fizzle out. The flame is going to go out. But you have enough there to where you don't need to bring a guy in. I hate hearing people say they're going to bring in one of these top shortstops. It's not going to happen. Then you have Ben Gamble and Brian Reynolds. Both of those guys should return in 2022. I don't think either of them is going to be traded like people keep saying they might be and all that stuff. They need to just go ahead and run that and make it work. And that's the thing that I hope that they do is just bring those two guys back, solidify center and left field, and then look at some right field options. Maybe you bring back Andrew McCutchen on a veteran deal. Maybe you try to lure Starling Marte back to where it all started and put him in right field or left field and then move Gamble and him around. Maybe you don't make that move at all and you bring up Travis Swaggerty if he has a strong spring despite the shoulder injury. You bring him up and then he plays well in right field and you figure that problem out. But starting pitching is where I think they need to be the most aggressive. Starting pitching is where they need to go and sign one or two guys and let some of these guys develop in AAA. If Miguel Yajure is in AAA at the beginning of the year, I'm not going to be mad. No, I won't. But I've also will say this. I have seen enough of Chad Kuhl and Steven Brault to know that I am not impressed. Steven Brault, love the guy. Last year, he was arguably the best pitcher on the staff when he came back at that time. Tyler Anderson was the best pitcher on this entire staff by a long shot. But efficiency-wise, Steven Brault, he's not a terrible pitcher, but is he worth giving arbitration to? I would say no. Maybe the Pirates see it differently. But if you take Chad Kuhl and Steven Brault out of the rotation, you don't know what you're ever getting from Mitch Keller. Miguel Yajure was good. Bryce Wilson will be in the rotation. Max Kranick and Chase DeYoung will also be fighting for spots, but you kind of want to get some veteran pitching in there just so you can get some efficient outings so your bullpen isn't dead by July like it was this past year. Because if you remember, the Pirates had one of the most efficient bullpens in all of baseball at one point when Richard Rodriguez, David Bednar, Chase Sean Shreve, Chris Stratton, and Dwayne Underwood Jr., and those guys were all killing it earlier in the year. But they were being used so much because these pitchers were only going 5 innings, and you saw that a lot in the postseason as well. But what I really expect is the Pirates to go out, get some veteran pitching in both the bullpen and the starting pitching staff, make it more efficient, make it more consistent, make it more Tyler Anderson-ish, where you know you're getting 5 innings from this guy every single time he goes out there, and you don't have to overuse the bullpen. But with all that said, everything I just said, we'll see what the Pirates decide to do here in the offseason. Today's episode, of course, is also brought to you by Locked On MLB. Go check out our pal Sully, Paul Francis Sullivan, over at Locked On MLB every single day, Monday through Friday. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. You can follow this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all that good stuff. We are going to be here Monday through Friday until they tell me otherwise. And, we're going to have fun. The Pirates are going to probably make some move over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be here to cover them. We're going to probably be doing a good amount of emergency podcasts this offseason until we get back into spring training in March. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in today on Wednesday, November 3rd. I hope you all have a phenomenal rest of your hump day. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will see you tomorrow, where we may have a special guest, may not, but if we do, you'll know who it is by then. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I am your host, Ethan Smith, signing out on today, and I will see you on the flip side.